Democrats had a huge victory, and I want to present this victory in an alternative manner. Okay, we're going to try to present this victory in a manner that is not typical. Instead of me just reading out a list of Democratic victories and achievements, I instead wanted to show you a video posted by Scott Presler, who is a big Republican campaigner. He's probably one of the biggest gay voices within the Republican Party, and he is out there putting out all the things that Republicans should be caring about and should be voting for going into November 4th's big special election. And I want you to listen to all of these things, and then I will tell you how they went afterwards, because the secret is not well. You know what? In fact, instead of doing it afterwards, I will tell you in real time as he has that smile on his face. Because the video he released after this of him marching down the hallway saying, "We've got plans." You know, I had to go back and find this video. I had to go back and see what the look on his face before.
Hey everybody, this is Scott Presler. Just did a hit at the Fox News studio in New York City with Fox and Friends First. So, New Jersey, today's the day. I ask for your vote for Jack Ciattarelli for governor.
He lost. The Democrat won the governorship. Even after exit polls said that voters' top issue was taxes. Different in Virginia. In Virginia, it was the economy, which might explain why the results were so devastating for Republicans there.
Virginia, I ask for your vote for Winsome Sears for governor.
Spamberger got the victory there, so they lost the governorship there as well.
California, yes, I am watching you, I hear you, I see you. No on Prop 50.
This has to do with giving basically Gavin Newsom and the California legislature the ability to redistrict in a way that could push back numbers-wise on the redistricting that is being done in Texas to box out Democrats from their seats. Prop 50 was allowing them to go forward with that process. Voting against it would say no. Prop 50 won.
And Pennsylvania, you know, I've been talking about this for a year. I need your vote. Flip over your ballot to fire 5 bad judges.
Didn't work.
Doherty, Donahue, Wecht, Dubois, and Wojcik. No, 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 no. And yes, Maine, I know that you have a proposition, actually 2 questions. Yes on question 1, voter ID. No on question 2, red flag laws. Georgia, you have...
You can guess how that went.
2 Republican incumbents running for the Public Service Commission. Georgia, you have a statewide election. I need you to vote today. And Texas, our beautiful Texans, where
Democrats won there as well. The Republicans took L's in both cases.
Got my start. I need you to come out and vote yes on Proposition 16, and we are going to make sure
No one.
that only citizens are participating in our elections. So from California, from the West Coast, all the way to Virginia, Jersey, and Pennsylvania near the East Coast, you come out, you make your voices heard today, Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, and we will make history today.
He didn't include the Virginia House elections as well, or the lieutenant governor elections, which actually went to Jay Jones, the lieutenant governor that was caught in that scandal recently of those texts that leaked of him talking about, like, you know, maybe if my opponent's, you know, this Republican's family was shot, he would understand on this issue, trying to basically say if he felt that suffering at home, then maybe he would move on the issue. And just talked in a very like matter-of-fact lull manner about it. Like, it was very funny to him. And it seemed that voters did not care enough in the grand scheme of things, considering how our politics has degraded, in order to elect a Republican in their place. And so Jay Jones won the election. He won. So yeah, back to back losses. Actually, you know what? I have to just check. Can we pull up that video of Scott Presser walking through the hallway? I wonder if we have that video still. No, I don't see it. I'm going to the meetings, going to the big meetings now. I will have to skip that. Anyway, why is it that Republicans did so poorly? Why is it that Democrats went from 51 to 49 in the Virginia House to now 64 seats? Maybe 65, but at least 64 seats, pushing down the Republicans down to 39, massively expanding the majority after pushing Glenn Youngkin out of the governorship, replacing them with a Democrat, pushing out the lieutenant governor after they had good Oppo research, good Oppo material on the lieutenant governor. They lose everywhere. They lose in New Jersey. They lose in Georgia. They lose in California. They lose in New Hampshire. They lose everywhere. They lose in Pennsylvania. They lose everywhere it is possible to lose. So after all of this devastating losses, you would expect the Republicans to maybe huddle up and try to figure out another pathway forward, because the way many people would judge this is that people are dissatisfied with how the Republicans are doing, and that this is a signal from voters that they better either correct course, or this will not just be the result in a special election. This could very well be the result in the midterms, removing Republicans from their House seats and bringing the Democrats to control the House again. Mike Johnson, though, is not that worried.
There's no surprises. What happened last night was blue states and blue cities voted blue. We all saw that coming. And no one should read too much into last night's election results. Off-year elections are not indicative of what's to come. That's what history teaches us. By the way, it's worthy of note that Zoran Mandami himself only received a little over 1 million votes, 1,036,000 votes. There are 8.3 million residents in New York City. 8.5 million actually is the number, I think. So about 12% of the city voted to turn their city over to the communists.
Now, this is interesting, his tone about how, elections like this don't matter at all, considering last time an election like this happened in Virginia, mind you, they took the House, they took the governorship and lieutenant governorship, and they didn't have this type of dominant majority that Democrats now have in Virginia. And he said about that at the time in 2022, in advance of the 2024 election, tonight's result in Virginia affirms that the American people have had enough of the Democrats' radical, authoritarian, big government, socialist policies. Red wave is coming, reckoning 2022. So obviously, whether or not this is an indication of things to come is dependent upon the particular political situation. If Republicans are winning, then it is an indication that Republicans are going to continue to win. If the Republicans are losing, then it doesn't have any connotation whatsoever, and this is an isolated incident, and the future is never determined by the past. So it seems that he is a bit in denial mode, but the reason why this happened, there's a few reasons why this happened. Promises like Ukraine being undelivered upon and Trump polling quite poorly on it, I'm sure that had an impact with some voters. I'm sure Trump's general conduct, and since he's been in the office, has had an impact. I think the conduct of his cabinet has certainly had an impact. I think some pardonings and the amount of corruption he's engaged in has had some impact. But I think the biggest impact, and of course the authoritarian nature, going after Jimmy Kimmel, these stupid priorities for the 10-11 months have certainly left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. But the big thing, the biggest thing, the thing that trumps all other things is the economy. It was the thing that won him the election. It was the reason why Harris was not made the next president of the United States. And Trump was because people wanted some change in the economy. They wanted the situation to improve more rapidly. And then they turned the situation over to Trump, and he instituted what is possibly a bunch of unconstitutional tariffs through emergency powers, declaring every situation and every trade arrangement in the world an immediate emergency that needs to be acted on through the chief executive's unilateral authority through executive order to implement tariffs, completely subverting Congress. And that had an impact on people's standard of living. He acted in a sporadic nature, which affected not only the stock market, but investors' interest in investing in the United States. So the impact that tariffs that he wanted tariffs to have when it comes to increased manufacturing did not happen, but it did increase the cost of bananas. It did increase the cost of those things that people import. It did increase the cost of the machine goods that are necessary for machine components that are imported from overseas for our factories. And ultimately, it also affected the export capacity of soybean farmers and other farmers who want to export abroad, some of which are now facing bankruptcy due to their loss of market share in China, which has been taken up by the Argentinians, who were also at the same time subsidizing. Are the deal, folks. Are the deal. Point is, grocery prices went up, cost of living also went up, and the economy did not significantly improve from where Trump was before. In fact, in some ways, the situation worsened when it came to, for example, available jobs, and when it came to the amount of personal debt that people are now carrying on themselves. Not to mention, a government shutdown is never fantastic for the economy. But if Donald Trump is asked about these things and people are, going to go vote in Virginia or wherever, and they look at the TV trying to hear, okay, I voted on the economy, I gave you this trust, and we saw a lot of districts that went for Trump in Virginia flipped. Districts that went for Trump in Georgia flipped. Where did those people come from? They came from moments like this.
Just hit an all-time high. We're doing really well.
Can I ask you, Mr. President, on that point, though, when the stock market is doing well, that doesn't affect everybody. Not everybody's invested in the stock market.
It does.
But there have been grocery prices
are up. 401ks. People have 401ks. Their 401ks are double what they were a year ago.
But for people that don't have 401ks or are not invested in the stock market, but they've seen their grocery prices go up, inflation.
No, you're wrong. They went up under Biden. Right now, they're going down. Other than beef, which we're working on, which we can solve very quickly, just hit an all.
So confront him with the problem, deny that there's a problem to begin with. And so the same, mind you, there was some attempts to deal with economic woes in the Biden administration, but the constant affirmation of this is the best economy ever. Oh my God, well, they didn't say the best economy ever, but it's really good economy, fantastic economy. We recovered very well. Some of these factors could be true on the macro scale, but when it comes to people's personal debt, credit card debt, student debt, when it comes to people's ability to pay mortgage, when it comes to the housing crisis and affordability, these things were not attended to. The ideas to solve them were not bold enough, and Trump was able to sweep in. But he didn't have a solution either. And so now he's up shit creek without a paddle. Just like since 2015, he said he would announce his healthcare plan. It's been a decade. We still have no healthcare plan. And so he was able to get in to the door, wiggle himself in like a vampire. But now when it comes to actually how to deal with the situation, we're left shit out of luck. Anyway, Democrats across the country celebrated as the results came in, like in Virginia's case, when Abigail Spanberger, the Democratic candidate for Virginia, was announced as the winner. Here is from her headquarters. Now, Mondami won, and we can talk about the implications in all these cases. For me as a Marylander, I think the case in Virginia is probably most significant for me, living in the Delmarva area, for getting Glenn Youngkin out of there, for Democrats controlling all the area around Washington, D.C. But I do also think that while, a mayoral race is a mayoral race, there is a question of national tone and how people see where the Democrats are moving. And that's why Mondami, even though he's a candidate for New York by New York, could have some national implications, even though he's not the candidate we should run on a national level. And this also got more focus because Mondami was the object of a threat by Donald Trump, which was, if Mondami wins, maybe we will not be giving them so much federal funds. Here's what he said. If communist candidate Zohran Mondami wins the election for mayor of New York City, it is highly unlikely that I will be contributing federal funds other than the very minimum as required to my beloved first home because of the fact that, as a communist, this once great city has zero chance of success or even survival. There will be no more New York City. It can only get worse with a communist at the helm, and I don't want to send, as president, good money after bad. You know, I remember talking to people about a second Trump term, and it's like, oh, people talk so bad about Trump the first term, and I mean, he did bad things, but like, the doomsday never happened. Let's put him back in again. He might be saying all this stuff about censoring this guy, censoring that guy, but you know, it probably won't happen, right? Probably won't happen. It's not really going to happen because of the way that people had talked about Trump at every single possible crisis, catastrophizing about it. It made it hard to warn people about the real threat. And since Trump only talks about things in a hyperbolic manner, the way he talks about Zoran, you know, an actual socialist, possible communist, you know, becoming mayor of New York, he couldn't catastrophize in a way that would catch attention outside of for who he already has in his circle of support, which wasn't going to vote for Mondami anyway, which is he needs more than those votes to get Mondami the victory. He doesn't pull that kind of weight in New York. It is my obligation to run the nation, and it is my strong conviction that New York City will be a complete and total economic and social disaster should Mondami win. His principles have been tested for over 1,000 years, and never have they been successful. He said this a few times. Let's play another example of that, where he said after his victory, the statement about 1,000 years.
Going to cost him a lot of money. After last night's results, the decision facing all Americans could not be more clear. We have a choice between communism and common sense. Does that make sense to you? Common sense. It's common sense or communism. And you know, you take a look back 1,000 years, it hasn't worked. If it worked, we'd be using it, I guess, but it hasn't worked. Our opponents are offering an economic nightmare. We're delivering an economic miracle. We have delivered in 9 months. This is the biggest investment of funds in a country in history by many times. That's good.
Communism hasn't been around for 1,000 years. It's been around for barely 100. Barely 100 years. Over 100 years, going on 200 years. It has not been around for 1,000. Maybe he's just talked in the way he talked. I mean, even the Israel-Palestine conflict doesn't go back thousands of years. People try to pretend it kind of does, but it is mainly originated in the late 1900s, going into the early 20th century, most directly kinetically starting when it comes to interstate conflict in 1948. Right? But people talk about it as if it goes back thousands and thousands of years. That Trump is one of those people who talks about it as if it goes back thousands of years. And he seems to do it in order to not only add more like umphs to his statements, but specifically make it more incredible that he was able to stop the war for good and forever, is the way he talks about it. That he was the one who could achieve the peace between the Israeli and Palestinian people that no one else could. No one else. So he talks in the same way and manner of this as he does in that case. Only problem is there's not even a way to bullshit your way out of the idea of, 1,000 years of communism. You can talk about, well, the Jewish people's roots go back to this area, 1,000. But you can't say anything about communism back past 200 years. So, but, you know, it does sound cool. So I'll give the president an excuse on that. 64 seats in Virginia. By the way, quick side note, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey did beat challenger Omar Fateh as they're moving towards the second crowd tally. For those of you who were following the Minneapolis mayoral election in the Democratic primary, the mayoral incumbent Frey has beaten Omar, his challenger. Across the board, if you wanted to look at some general data trends, one I would want to point out is how women turned out for Democrats, particularly young women, where in the case of 81% of young women going for Mondami in New York City, 80% for Cheryl in New Jersey, which was the woman who beat the Republican challenger, and Spamberger in Virginia at 78% per NBC's exit polling. So women largely went towards Democrats. Young women went hard for Democrats. Men went for Republicans. But women went harder for Democrats than men went for Republicans. And that ended up having quite the quantitative effect and delivering Democrats the victory. And they were able to limit those gains with men enough to get them the victory in Virginia, in New Jersey, in New Hampshire, in California, in Virginia, and in Georgia. You know, I understand the idea that a special election is a special election. It's in the name, after all, and that you have wider participation around an actual midterm than you have when trying to inform the people an election is going on, when a lot of people don't even know an election is going on. I will say that that is true, but the 2020 special election in Virginia ended up being a bellwether for the results of the 2024 election. There were other factors, of course, the last second switcheroo with Biden to Harris, the short period she had to deliver her message. There were other factors involved, but it was a bellwether. And so ignoring the possibility of this being a bellwether, when not only did Democrats win, but Democrats won in much larger margins than Republicans won in 2022, especially when it comes to the Virginia House race, where they now dominate the Virginia House, at least 64 seats, maybe 65, as they're finishing the count. This was fueled by a lot of turnout in suburban areas and a lot of concern about A, the economy, and B, abortion rights, which after the overturn of Roe v. Wade and with a Republican governor and lieutenant governor, this was something that Virginian women were particularly concerned about, which might be one of the reasons why young women turned out 78% for Spamberger in Virginia, with the Republican crusade to overturn Roe versus Wade still doing electoral damage to them way after Trump's first term. So, what do I take for national implications? Number one, I do think this is a bellwether for how the midterm election is headed. I know Trump is trying to find other ways to block up, seats here and seats there. He's talking about picking up seats very openly, but a lot of these seats that he wants to pick up, it's going to be in the elections that come next. So even if he wanted to make up a ton of ground by just cutting up districts and gerrymandering away, which he seems very open to, seems very enthused by, instead of making independent election commissions to try to deal with the partisan nature of choosing the voter instead of the voter choosing the politician. But either way, I do think that this is a bellwether, in the same way that 2022 was a bellwether for indicating where the country could go, especially due to the size of the performance. I think it also shows that Democratic messaging has improved in the year since the election. While Democrats are performing much better in districts where Trump won, flipping a lot of district towards the Democratic candidates, in districts where they lost for Harris, I think that is in part not just due to, these like Spamberger being particularly a fantastic candidate, but also due to the improvement in messaging, the improvement in the focusing on affordability, and the fact that, again, they did not switcheroo all their candidates at the last second. Mind you, there was a risk with Jay Jones and that scandal coming out with those leaked texts of a possibility of last-second switcheroo, but that got avoided. They ran with the candidate anyway, and Jay Jones won. The Democrats kept their nose to the grindstone, and that determination on seeing it through to the finish line was rewarded by the voters. So I think that you can talk about this as a bellwether. I think you can talk about this as a fact that the Mondami affordability strategy has success, while maybe the messaging as an open democratic socialist is not going to work in Montana. I think the focus on affordability and a focus on a lot of the issues he focused on, like public transportation and big bold ideas to offer an alternative positive future instead of an anti-Trumpian, let's continue the vibe, hasn't the gravy train been good, with marginal adjustments here and there. No, people want transformative change. They asked for transformative change. Trump was the only one talking in a transformative manner, and so voters went with him. And I think Democrats have, to some degree, processed a lot of that information. I hope in the next year before the midterms, they continue to process it and build off of it while not taking the wrong signals that they need to have somebody running in all the states talking about Uzbek nurses and all the abuelas out there and that type of identity-based small tents, all these different small tents coming together to form a big tent, messaging that Madami engaged in, when really the policy wonkery. That's what they need to focus on. The affordability issues, the tabletop issues, focusing in on that while making sure to keep Trump as a part of your campaign because he is unpopular, but not making him the focus of the campaign. A positive vision must be the focus. I think that's part of what led Democrats to victory. Positive vision, affordability, Trump's still a loser, and this is the bellwether. Those are my takeaways. Good night and good luck, everyone. Please go watch my new documentary, 1 Year on the Pokrovsk Frontline, if you haven't already. Bye-bye.